Hey guys, thanks for checking in on part 2 of my shimming basics for Armstrong foils A+ setups. In part 1 we covered how a foil setup works and how shimming can affect the entire setup. If you haven't seen part 1, it's probably best to watch this first as a foundation for better understanding. So for this video we will look at concepts of shimming and mast placement. Of course, my opinions are from my own experience, tuning my equipment to what suits me, and it may not apply to you. But as much as possible, I just want to share what I've learned. It may be of some use. Okay, so let's look at mast placement. Previously, I've made a video about setting up Armstrong FG boards. I will share some important concepts that apply here, but I have a link below if you would like to watch that video in full. Many times I quiz riders I'm sharing sessions with as to why they have their mast placed at the most forward position in the mast box. Most of the time, they respond that it's a trending concept, or their favorite pro was riding that way, or they want more front foot pressure. All valid stuff. But I think it's helpful for us to understand gear setup so that we can create an ideal setting for our riding style, ability, and our anatomy. Now from a rider's perspective, foiling is from the rider down. Before we can get to mast placement, we should look at the board. The Armstrong FG boards have an amazing proprietary mast box, mixed with progressive nose rocker on the deck as a basic premise of their forward geometry tech, or FG boards for short. And let's look at some best fit ideas. We want to find an ideal stance on our boards, and a good way to find this is to take our boards, place on top of a bag or a soft surface, and see what feels good underfoot. We all have different size feet, so taking stance suggestions from your favorite pro with size 9 feet may not apply to you if you have size 12 feet. As soon as you find a comfortable dynamic stance, take note of your back foot position, flip the board over, and see where on the FG scale your back foot lies. We can now place the mast relative to your ideal stance. So many factors contribute to the fine-tuning of your gear for each session. Only experience can create an intuitive working where you can approach foiling knowing exactly how you're going to adjust tuning for the day. But don't worry, even the best of us make mistakes or stubbornly choose a preferred equipment over what's best. For now though, I'll share some basic settings as a datum for you to work with. For me personally, I found that pumping the Armstrong foils is pretty much in the same position. My back foot is over the mast or slightly in front of. During riding though, there is a variation of change in back foot placement, with my back foot moving behind the mast, more so for the MA foils, less for the CF, HS and HA foils. But what do we do if we are shimming our setups? In part 1 of the shimming video, we covered that adding shims is positive shimming for Armstrong A+ setups. Adding red and blue shims reduce drag and increase performance. We may also recall that lift is reduced. So if you already have a setup that has been working well for you, then adding a shim will reduce lift and the balance feel that you previously had. The result may be a diving sensation of the setup and a need to apply back foot leverage to maintain foiling. We can remedy this with mast placement, progressively moving the mast forward until your stance feels familiar again. The final result being just an increase in performance as we have cancelled out the loss of lift by moving the mast forward. This may take some time fine-tuning and experimenting how the mast needs to move for your stance, but you should have some basic understanding of this concept to find a good placement. For me, riding prone surf, I like to have my foot's width of leverage behind the mast so I can pivot the tail more and enjoy some turning input. Without having to look at the board, I can feel the best fit position on the deck, knowing that the mast is in the pumping position, then slide my foot back against the tailstop for the best dynamic riding position. Of course, the conditions of the day are a major part of gear selection. When more speed is involved, we can move the mast back a little, as an increase in speed also means an increase in lift, especially while foiling bigger waves or winging or kiting. Simply removing any shims can create some drag for added control without having to move your mast. Of course, reducing the size of your front foil is the most obvious choice, retaining the same stance feel without adjusting mast position or your shims. This all becomes essential when using foot straps. With your feet fixed, it becomes evident very quickly if the setup has too much lift or not enough. I like to keep a tool with me to make adjustments in the water when introducing any changes, even shimming. So in summary, we can see that finding a comfortable position to stand on the board should come first before looking at mast placement. Depending on the foil selections and our shimming adjustments, we can place our mast and take into consideration the conditions for the day. So I hope this was helpful. In the future we will cover mast shimming, which really should be called board shimming, and shimming to compensate for mixed match of Armstrong foils tech from different generations. Till then, have fun out there guys.